Welcome. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family, and a blessed new year to you. And we are so excited that you have welcomed us into your home. We would love to hear from you. So send us an email with your question or your comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. And today we are very excited to have Dr. Abby Jorgensen with us. She is a professor of sociology and healthcare ethics at St. Louis University, and she specializes in families and grief. As a bereavement doula, she supports families facing miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss, and leads Haven Bereavement Doulas. And it's a beautiful training organization for grief support. And she's authored a beautiful book called The Catholic Guide to Miscarriage, Stillbirth, and Infant Loss, Compassionate Answers to Difficult Questions. And this beautiful book is available at ewtnrc.com, and you also can go to our website, abbythesociologistdoula.com. So, who knew that there was a bereavement doula? Is there a need for a bereavement doula? Well, 1 in every 4 pregnancies ends in a spontaneous miscarriage. So there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of sorrow, there's a lot of grief that is forbidden. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do this? What is the medical community doing? What is the church doing to support husbands and wives and families that are going through this? And God has blessed Abby with some solutions. And so we're grateful that we're going to bring her to you today.
Well, the title of the book says a lot. Compassionate Answers to Difficult Questions. A Catholic Guide to Miscarriage, Stillbirth, and Infant Loss. A Catholic guide. I don't think I've ever read another book that says this is a Catholic guide, Catholic way of looking at these tender areas of miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. This book is destined to be a classic in this area. I hope it's not the end of writing on these painful realities of loss and hope. And so it's going to be a tremendous show. Pray that many here would be touched by what's going to take place here, that somehow, some way you would feel like there's some understanding. We can't know what you've been through, but we can stand under you. And that there are people who want to do that, especially Abigail Jorgensen. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. A very special At Home with Jim and Joy. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Well, we are very excited to have Dr. Abby Jorgensen with us. Now, she is a professor of sociology and healthcare ethics at St. Louis University, and she specializes in families and grief. She's also a bereavement doula, and she supports families facing miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss, and leads Haven Bereavement Doulas. And it's a beautiful training organization for grief support. Her book is entitled A Catholic Guide to Miscarriage, Stillbirth, and Infant Loss, Compassionate Answers to Difficult Questions. And this beautiful book is available at ewtnrc.com. And you can also go out to her website, abbythesociologistdoula.com, where you will get compassionate answers. Well, we are excited to have you. And as we start off this new year, there's a lot of people facing grief and sorrow and sadness. And maybe they're looking to do that on a better foot, better understanding. And so we want you to tell our family a little bit about your personal journey, and then what prompted you to make the decision to write this beautiful book?
Absolutely. I started off this work just as an undergraduate who was surrounded by people who were experiencing loss. And that was a long time ago. Now I'm married to an incredible husband, Rasmus. I have a beautiful daughter, Eleanor, who's 4. I'm currently pregnant and expecting, which we're very grateful for. But we've also had 3 losses ourselves. And even before this work became my priority, I started realizing that there just wasn't much out there for people who experienced miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant loss. And that's true in the Catholic world, but that's also true in the secular world. And noticing that my friends, my employers, my people around me in my community who were having these losses didn't have support was really startling to me. Yes. But I did realize that maybe I had some experience that had helped me prepare for this calling that I didn't know I had. I went to a lot of funerals growing up. My mom homeschooled me and took me to several funerals because we just didn't let people grieve alone, was what she told me once. And so I had my funeral outfit picked out. I knew what I was wearing. I would listen to the different hymns and think, oh, I want this played at my funeral because this is such a beautiful song. I had my funeral planned before I had my wedding planned because I didn't know if I was going to get married, but I knew I would die. And so having this sort of familiarity with death was a huge gift to me when, a decade later in college, I started realizing that death was surrounding me. It was the death of little ones that weren't talked about in homilies, that weren't talked about in newspapers, those griefs that went so quietly unobserved. And that's when I realized maybe this is what I need to be using my skill set for. Maybe this is what I need to emphasize in my career. So now I get to do that both as a professor studying grief and how we can better support people who experience grief, and as a bereavement doula working with families, and as someone who trains others to better equip them to feel confident and comfortable in supporting families through loss.
And I just want to say to our family out there, and you may be out there and you experienced a miscarriage maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in the medical community or the church or your family, and nobody gave you permission to grieve about that or to have a conversation about it or to share your loss or how you felt. It's never too late to grieve. It's never too late to celebrate and to thank God for the life of that child that you had. And so you could reach out to Abby and heal and seal that wound this side of heaven. Because there are so many couples, right? I mean, the medical community certainly wasn't giving permission to grieve 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And the church is rather silent on it. And so people and they never talked about it. Or they don't even talk about it to their spouse or to their other children. Like, children find out, my mother had a miscarriage between my older brother and my older sister. I never knew that, right? And so there is no permission to grieve.
We haven't been taught how to do this very well, right? There are some things that we learn very well. This is the sociologist in me coming out, right? That we're told how you should behave in certain situations. So a lot of people know if someone's grandmother dies, the next time you see that person, you say, I'm really sorry for your loss. But if your coworker has a miscarriage, what are you supposed to say? What are you supposed to do, right? We don't have that same kind of teaching or socialization that happens where our society knows what to do. And what do you get when you have a bunch of people who don't know what to do? A bunch of people who do nothing, right? And I think we've seen a lot of movement on this in the past couple of decades, of people really starting to talk about what's needed, what we can do, but we definitely have a lot more room to grow.
Well, you're doing so much in terms of your own ministry, your profession, a bereavement doula. You train people with perinatal loss at these various stages and how they can help, aid, and assist. And then you penned this book, which is maybe the first full version of things we should be addressing. So you have here Understanding Perinatal Loss, the Basics of Birth and Bereavement. Your chapters are long. There's a lot of stuff. So Understanding Perinatal Loss. And then your second chapter is entitled Baby. It's a big question, right? Baby. Yes. Did my baby have a soul? Did my baby's life have purpose? Where do unbaptized babies go after death? And so on. I mean, you're addressing some big, tender questions. Chapter 3, those who mourn. What feelings are normal? Are some feelings wrong when a child dies? And so on. So many things you're addressing. And then you've got God for a chapter. That was a big one to take on there.
Yes.
Why did God let my baby die?
Mm-hmm.
Why does an all-powerful, all-good God allow death? Why does God allow grief? And so then there's a whole bunch of questions. You're taking on the big questions that people are saying, and maybe not just saying it in anger, confusion. And then the final chapter is the church teaching on remains for families, Catholic understanding of sacraments for families. And so this is big, and I just wanted to say that just in case we don't get to all those, because this is such a tremendous resource. If anybody else has written on something like this, I'd like to know that. Maybe they can call us, we'll have you on the show. But this is such a grace that you've given to us that work in these areas to various degrees. So it's about priests, it's about dioceses, it's about a pro-life center, and people seeing us as a center of love and life. And so people who are experiencing miscarriage, I was sharing this with you before the show, like they'll call us, they'll call me in particular. They don't even call the parish or the diocese, or maybe they didn't hear anything. And it's kind of like, I have my baby. What do I do? How do I preserve this baby? Where would I bury this baby? I'm in the hospital now miscarrying. What do we do? Can we get all these questions? And it seems to me, and this is where you come in so big, is that the parish should be prepared for that. And maybe they are, we're just not hearing it. The diocese should be set up for this. And it just, a lot of people are hurt because they come and say, I did call here or there, and nobody's saying anything to me. Why is this so taboo? And we're supposed to be the sanctity of life at every stage and phase. So what does the church offer? Like you say, they have resources and so on. So we hear people say, well, there's nothing. Well, there is something. There needs to be a lot more. Just speak to that whole thing of what the church should be doing or can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the list of questions that you gave is the questions in the book. The book is set up as a question and answer format. So you can go to that one question and just read that one section and get that one answer if that's what you need. Yeah. So the goal there is that if you are that priest, if you are that person at the pregnancy care center, whomever you are, and you get one question, you'll be able to find the answer very quickly. And the reason I set it up like that is not because I was brilliant and came up with this whole list of questions. I just went through what my clients ask me. I just wrote down, went through all my texts and all my emails in preparation for writing this book and just wrote down what are all the questions I keep getting asked that people are afraid to bring to their priest or go to their diocese, but the diocese says, we don't know, right? What are those questions that really hurt families? And then that's where this book really started. And what the church offers is very different in different circumstances. So sometimes you'll have a priest who's very, what I call, grief informed. He knows to say something like, I'm so sorry for your loss. He knows to treat this like a real loss. He knows to look up what's available if he doesn't know. Maybe he can even help you find a burial vessel for your child, right? And you have other priests who maybe don't have that training or that pastoral skill to sit with a family who's experienced a miscarriage and see that as a real loss. So who you have as your priest could matter. Your diocese might matter too. Some dioceses allow families to bury their children's remains in cemeteries, even though the children haven't been baptized. Which is an actual provision the diocese needs to make then, that those children can be baptized or can be laid to rest in a Catholic cemetery without being baptized. And so many dioceses do that. A few still don't. We're working on that. But that opportunity to see your child as one of the church family, even though they didn't have the chance to be baptized because they died before they were born, is huge. One of the things I really love that the church does offer is the naming and commendation rite. So this is a beautiful ritual that
naming the child and commending him or her
to God. Exactly. And the point of this is that it can be done at any point, any time. So if you've had a loss 50 years ago, this ritual is for you. If you had a loss yesterday, this ritual is for you. And what I love about that is that we have a lot of beautiful rituals the church does offer us, like funeral masses and burials. But those aren't always available to families. Not every family has the remains of their child. Not every family can have the remains of their child. And some families don't get the chance to grieve until, like you were saying, Joy, decades after the loss. So the naming and commendation rite is this beautiful gift that the Archdiocese of St. Louis put together several decades ago for any family who's experienced loss. And if I could get everyone in the world to just know one thing about what the Catholic Church offers, I think that would be it. That we have this beautiful rite, we have a prayer for you. You are not forgotten just because your child died so ill.
So where does that take place?
And it can take place anywhere. It can be led by a deacon, a priest, a lay minister, whomever is
In
available.
a sanctuary? Or
It can
church,
be, or at a
home?
cemetery, or at home, or wherever, yes.
So you're naming the child and you're commending him to the Lord.
Exactly.
And it's a public thing, no matter
Yes.
how many people are there. And it's just saying, this child, this person, this human being, we should have a name and should be affirmed and confirmed and commended to the Lord.
Exactly.
From
Well,
whom he
I know
came.
that our parish, our priest had a mass for any woman who's experienced a miscarriage. And he had a designated day and time where any couple that experienced a miscarriage could come and have a mass offered, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
But educate our family about perinatal loss. Like, break it down, because you did it so well in the book about the stages and the phases of it, because people are kind of, I don't know, what it was a blighted ovum, it was this, it was, I don't know what it was undiagnosed. And so they don't know the dignity and the value of that human life.
What does perinatal mean? And then there's kind of segments within that.
Yes,
Go ahead.
absolutely there are. So perinatal is the word that we use to refer to anything between the conception of a little one and about their first birthday. That depends on who you ask, so that's not even really a solid definition there. But perinatal could mean that we have a 6-week-old baby who's having trouble eating, or it could mean that we have an 8-week gestation baby who's got some diagnoses going on. So it could be positive or negative. Perinatal loss refers to the death of that child at any point between conception and their first birthday. In the United States, we break that down into 3 categories, which is miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. And I say in the United States because the actual cutoffs of these timelines differ a little bit in different countries. But the important thing to remember is that miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss just refer to how old that little one is when they die. So if the baby dies somewhere between conception and 20 weeks gestation, we call that a miscarriage. If a baby dies between 20 weeks gestation and their birth, we call it a stillbirth. And if the baby dies after birth but before their first birthday, we call that an infant loss. So if you hear any of these terms, the important things to remember is that, number one, it might be telling you something about when the baby passed away relative to how old they were. And number two, it's a real loss. Every one of these is an important loss of a little one, an important loss to a family. One loss is not bigger than the other, though they may be different depending on how old the baby is.
Because hope deferred makes the heart sick. And no matter what stage or phase that baby was lost, there's a broken heart for that couple.
Well, we're going to have to take a break at this point. We're going to hold you over for the final segment. So much to share here, and we pray that you are being especially blessed during this time. If you've suffered a loss like this, you know someone who has. It is mysterious, but it doesn't have to be so mysterious that we don't say anything or can't say something that's right or invite them into the community, both the person who's hurting as well as their child to be a part of the community. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, we're finishing up our conversation with Dr. Abby Jorgensen. So tell our family, what should a couple, what should a family do if they have experienced a loss, a perinatal loss, and what can they expect and support from their church?
The very first thing I would recommend is to contact your parish or your pastor, or a parish or pastor nearby who you know to be really supportive of families in this situation. And hopefully they'll get you connected to the right people for your diocese, for your area. But the second thing is, if you don't know who that person is, or you don't know if you can really trust someone around you, or you don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to a Catholic bereavement doula, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to a trusted friend and ask them to help you navigate this. The third thing, and the most important thing probably to remember, is you do not have to do this alone. So if you have those questions about why the church doesn't allow me to baptize my baby when they're in utero, if you have those concerns about where do I bury my baby, will I be able to bury my baby, you don't have to keep those to yourself. And if you have grief over this loss, if you wish that you could share with people pictures of your baby or what your baby's name was, you can do that too. You can reach out to other people. So whether that's your pastor, whether that's somebody at your church who's in lay ministry, whether that's a friend, other bereaved parents. I know I have found so much solidarity in the bereaved parents community group that Julie McKay and I get to run, where every month we just come together and share our children's names, share our children's stories, talk about the reality of what it's like to miss our little ones. So really what I'd like to remind people who experience a loss is to reach out for help and to know that you are not alone in how you're feeling and what you're experiencing.
And so the reality on this side is that we're grieving those that we don't see anymore. And yet we know that they still exist, that this life is going on in some form or some fashion. And I guess in being with others, you get that, that my child is alive in the Lord. And that's just so important.
It is. We talk a lot
Continue
about
that relationship somehow, some way.
Yes, what it's like to parent your child right now is a common question that I ask lost parents. And I talk about it a lot in the book as well. What is it like to parent your child when they're dead? That's a really fundamental question that I don't think we talk about enough. But there are spaces where people can have those conversations.
Give me one example of how you do that, of how you parent. My child's passed on. What are you talking about parenting?
Yes. So one example might be asking for their intercession. So for this little baby, I've been asking the intercession of their 3 siblings who have already gone before them, right? And that's such a powerful way for me to continue parenting. I would have thought that I'd be instructing those children in the faith, and now they're instructing me, right? They're the ones who are pleading for my salvation. What a beautiful gift that is. Other families might have a bouquet of flowers that they refresh every month in honor of their child. Families might build a bike rack at the school that would have been their child's elementary school in honor of their children. There's so many ways that we can continue parenting our little ones.
Abigail, thank you so much. We thank God that we have you again with us tomorrow on this sensitive and so important reality. The book is a compassionate answers to difficult questions, a Catholic guide, uniquely Catholic, like she was saying. We can ask for their prayers and so on. That's Catholic. You know, the community continues, and we're all associated with one another. It doesn't stop. Continuing that parenting. So, a Catholic guide, miscarriage, stillbirth, and infant loss. Pray that you've been blessed today and that you will learn more in this area, and perhaps yourself be trained to help other people, to be a good listener and a good counselor. You don't have to know exactly what's happening, but you have to stand intelligently, spiritually, compassionately under someone at these times. You're an important part of this EWTN family. You're never alone, and you're always at home with Jim and Joy. Bye now.